My full name is Jonathan Jason Todd Gottlieb. Growing up in a middle-class family in the 60s, I was in privileged status. And you might ask, what does that mean? Well, that just means that, I wasn't looked at like a criminal or anything until I became a criminal. And when I became a criminal, I was placed as a ward of the court by the Orange County authorities because I was incorrigible and I was a ward of the court. So as a result of being a ward of the court, I started to learn a different path on how to behave, on how to think. And it was not a social path or a pro-social path. It was more of one of destruction, violence, substance use, criminality. And I kept that journey for many, many years, which culminated in my being incarcerated in 1980 for a participation in the taking of a human life. And I received a life sentence of 17 years to life. That sentence was long. And during that period of time of my incarceration, I learned through my own decision-making that I needed to change some things. I got exposed to vocational training about 7 years into my life sentence, and I took off from there. As a result of being industrious and being able to be creative, the vocational indentured apprentice program I was a part of was all aspects of upholstery. And I found that I had a skill and an artistic talent to be able to be creative in that field, and I took to it very well. It was 6,000 hours. I utilized that vocational training as a leaping point to start pursuing other pro-social groups and rehabilitative efforts while in prison. Now granted, I come from a different era of prisoner. My prison experience started, my incarceration started in the 60s, the 1960s. And there was a lot of violence and there was a lot of gang activity in the prisons that was left unchecked. So one of the questions I think I had here was, how was your prison experience? Well, sometimes it was very difficult. I mean, survival was a key ingredient, and you needed to know how to maneuver inside of a correctional facility in order to survive. But once again, in that same environment, I found ways to provide myself with growth opportunities. Like I shared already, committing myself to a 6,000-hour course was no big feat because I never committed myself. In fact, the only thing I ever knew what the word commit was, commit to an institution. So committing was a skill that I needed to learn to develop, and I did that in prison. Fast forward to 2005, I was looked upon favorably for the 4th consecutive time by the Board of Parole Hearings, unanimously granted parole 4 straight times, rejected 3 in a row by 2 different governors, and I was released in 2005. I was elated, and I was scared, and I was overwhelmed, and I was nervous. And in those days, 2005, there was no real push for rehabilitative efforts upon reentry and transition. Not like there is today, and I'm really glad to be a part of that today. What did I not get? There was no real support in as much as a long-term offender being incarcerated and now needed to acclimate himself back into the community. There was real no support like that. I was on parole, it was high risk, supervised parole, but there was no real reentry path other than seeing a parole agent 2 times a month. Another challenge upon my reentry was work. Minimum wage at that time was $10 an hour. I must have interviewed 3 or 4 different times. The ban the box had not been put into play yet, so that became a big hurdle and a challenge when you'd fill out a job application, because it'd ask you, have you ever been arrested and or convicted of anything other than a minor traffic violation? If yes, please explain. Well, through my teachings, I learned to mark yes, so I'm not lying, and then write down would be willing to explain during an interview. That didn't get me a lot of interviews. So I struggled with employment until a really close support person of mine in Stockton, California, contacted me and asked me if I wanted to be a part of a group of people that would go inside the correctional facilities, Department of Juvenile Justice facilities. At the time there was 9, and provide male accountability curriculum to the youth in there. So I did that for 11 and a half years. Every day I was going inside of correctional facilities, even though I was out here in the community. I'd gotten off parole in 2010, so that was a milestone. I celebrated with a Marie Callender's pie and a cup of coffee. And so that was a milestone. And the goal today for people that are reentering the community day is to know that this is, to develop a sense of belonging in the community. This is where you belong. You don't belong back inside. There ain't enough domino tables and pinochle tables to keep you interested inside the prison. Out here is the main event, and I'd really like for everybody to achieve a sense of belonging in the community and have hopefulness. Reentry and transition rehabilitation has been bolstered over the last 15 years in the onset of AB 109, Assembly Bill 109, that provided funding for reentering and returning citizens. And we're still in that mode, thank God. And so there are a lot of support resources available for people returning to the community if you choose to utilize them. It's like the old saying, you can't make a horse drink, you know, that kind of thing. So, but we're here, other collaborating partners in the community are here. But when I got out, there was none. There really wasn't. The parole office had a STAR program, and what that pretty much was just a babysitting tool at the parole office for them to take the ones that they figured were gonna be uncooperative and make them come every day to the parole office. That was not rehabilitation, that was more like supervision. So sober living environments were just becoming a thing when I first got out. I didn't need that. I was very, very fortunate that I was able to parole to my father's home. And I love my father, he was my best friend. He's no longer with us, but I was with him for 10 years when I got out. And as a result of that, one of the experiences I experienced was people in the community that love you, they don't know what you went through. They absolutely don't have a clue on what a yard looks like, or when you hear sirens and whistles and buzzers that tell you to get down and security stuff jumping off. So they don't know what might be lurking in the back of your mind at any given moment when you're out here in the community. When I said that when I first got out I was scared and I was apprehensive, I was. I'd spent a long time in the community and I didn't have any real peers out here. That didn't stop me. I was the type of person that was resilient and saw opportunities where maybe others didn't see them. And like I said, I was very fortunate to be put to work within a year of my release for a long, long time, and I'm still working. Friends Outside and I were introduced to each other in 1974 when I was in Norwalk in the California Youth Authority. And as a result of a visit, they interacted with families and the authorities and the offender while they were inside. Friends Outside's been doing this a long time. So they came about the same year I was born, 1955, and I am sharing my age. And so they're celebrating 70 years of service right now. And as a result of those 70 years, most people that have ever been a part of, worked for, been serviced by Friends Outside come away with some type of valuable or beneficial information or referrals to help them along their journey. I would ask them to focus on the 3 F's: family, freedom, and their future. And if they can buy into that, because it takes a journey to buy into that, if they can buy into that, then they see that as valuable. And when they see that as valuable, then they see themselves as valuable and seek out the resources that are available to them because they're out here. They are out here. And if you're apprehensive or you're timid or you're scared or ambivalent, you can call Friends Outside anytime.